everybody. Welcome to episode 39 of podcast. I'm going to be joined today by Lacy, an independent freight agent. Just before we hop into today's show, we got to get through the EF routing top hauls of the week. Coming in at number one for dry van, it's going to be a Virginia to Pennsylvania, coming in between $2.3 and $4 a mile. Got a Kentucky to Maryland, again 2.3 to 2.6 a mile. On the reefer side, we got a PA to New Hampshire coming in between 3.7 and almost 6.3, 6.4. That seems to be a theme, these short east reefer runs coming in at wild RPMs. We got an Ohio to PA, 3.3 to 4.4 almost. The flatbed side, again, the Northeast, 3.5 to 4.7. And to wrap up flatbed, you got a South Carolina to Virginia for honestly some very solid money for that lane. The best loop for a drive-in is going to start in the south, North Carolina to South Carolina, heading over to Chicago, then going over to Indiana, back to Chicago, and back to North Carolina. Like to see this loop above 2 per mile, but I mean, you see the top end 3.4 to almost 3.5, so be careful when you're booking. Best loop for reefer is going to be again starting in Atlanta, going over to PA, heading over to Maryland, New York, Indiana, and finaling back in Atlanta. Going to end up there at 2.2 to 3.5, almost 3.6, topping out at almost 10 grand on the gross. So reefer's looking pretty nice. And to finish with flatbed, got an Ohio to PA, over to Ohio, back to Illinois, Indiana, finishing in Ohio. Coming in at 2.5 to 4.2, seeing a lot of rate per mile ranges. So when you're booking your freight, just pay attention. That's it with the EF routing stuff. Let's get into today's show. What's going on, Lacy?
Not much. How are you, Alex?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. I'm basically in paradise right now, I suppose. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah,
though.
you got
Thank
some nice sunshine behind you. It's looking nice over there.
North Carolina's been nice for the last day and a half. I mean, we had some pretty bad weather there for a while. Like, we were literally flooded for a while. It's a good day.
Yeah, I heard you guys were having some bad weather. Some drivers were told to advise on the weather conditions.
Yes, so I had one driver that had to delay a little bit because he was driving through Raleigh down into South Carolina, and it was pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean, let's get into today's show. How did you get into logistics? What was your start in this industry?
I started because it just fell into my lap. I had a former employer that had basically given me a performance improvement plan about a week after I told them I was pregnant. And a year later, I still couldn't find work. And I had a friend that was very much into the freight industry. She had a terminal here in Wilmington, North Carolina, and she offered me a job just taking care of the office stuff, dispatching, coordinating. It was all drayage and intermodal. And that's kind of how I got started in it. And it was pretty much baptism by fire, and it was really wild.
Yeah, I mean, I started out the same way in dispatch, but I can't really imagine starting out in drayage as opposed to starting out with drive and stuff.
It was crazy. I had no idea what I was doing at all, and half the time she wasn't there. So I was relying on some of the people from corporate to tell me what to do. So it was all just kind of figuring it out as I went, and it just kind of fell into place, and here I am today.
I mean, that's most people start in logistics. I say it over and over again. Not many of us were 5 or 6 years old and said, I'm going to work with trucks when I grow up.
So that was not what I wanted to do. Far from it. I went to school for music. That didn't take off, clearly, because here I am. And I've been in nursing homes. I worked with people with disabilities, and then I went into sales, and here I am. Somebody told me 6, 7 years ago that this is what I'd be doing with my life, I would have laughed.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean, I think that's fair. Even sometimes I think about what I'm doing with my life right now, and I mean, I love logistics, but in the grand scheme of things, it's one of those things that you can't really explain it to people. Like even family members be like, "Well, what do you do?" I'm like, "I don't know. I put stuff in trucks and we take it places." It's like a weird job because nobody you really
Yeah.
know is doing it for the most part. So,
Which is crazy
um,
because it's such a large industry and it's everything we have around us is here because of logistics and the trucking industry. We wouldn't have anything if it weren't for that. And it surprises me how much people don't know about it.
yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the best kept secrets in the world because, I mean, the money you can make as a driver with no education, the money you can make as a broker with no formal education, as a carrier, on the dispatch side, I mean, it's substantial amount of money flows through this industry. If you're willing to work and, you fit in this industry, there's a lot of money you can make with it. And nobody tells you about it. Nobody thinks about it. And it's one of those jobs that just is kind of hidden in plain sight. And until you find some random way of getting into it, nobody really explains it to you, right? Like, I mean, you see trucks every day on the road. You see all the stuff in your house. You know it came from a truck, but nobody knows that you can just work in this industry. Like,
Mhm. I had somewhat of, I was somewhat familiar with it because my grandfather was a truck driver. He did it through Teamsters, but nobody told me about brokering. Nobody told me about how this industry really works. So, when I was first introduced to it, it was mind blowing. It was at like this. I never knew. No, like there's not an option in school or college. They're like, hey, that you could be doing this. It's
yeah,
just
I
very
mean, I
different.
think the truck driver route people are familiar with since Smoking the Band that was so big, and like there's an allure to being a truck driver, but I've never seen a freight broker movie or like a dispatcher movie, and
I don't
even
think
in
there should
Smoking
be.
the
That's crazy.
Bandit, I mean, even in Smoking the Bandit, it's not like you see him waiting for a dispatcher to find them a load or like there's like the behind the scenes isn't in the movie. So,
No,
um,
on second thought, maybe there should be a movie based on, or at least a documentary based on dispatchers and freight brokers, and how put a couple truck drivers in there too, and it would probably make for interesting episodes.
I mean, there's like a case for a serious one to be done correctly with like professionals and good brokers and good drivers. But honestly, I'm
Yes.
more for making like a shock piece where it's like, this is how this stuff gets into your home. It's a bunch of like college kids hitting gongs all day. It's
That's reality. I think for probably 60% of the logistics industry or the 3PL industry, it's mostly college kids and gongs, and and there
zins and
are
ping
people
pong
out there that are
tables.
ambitious. Yeah, great.
I mean, what was your first success in logistics? What was the first time you thought to yourself, like I might be good at this?
Honestly, my first job, because I was the only one there 80% of the time. And I was pretty much figuring it out just based on little pieces of information. And when I say it was just me, it was me and 12 other drivers in Dre. Like, I'm running a whole terminal with 12 drivers and a lady that's drunk 90% of the time and doesn't know what's going on. So,
I
and
mean, it's not funny, but
it's
it's funny
not
on the outside.
it's funny now. It was not funny then. Um, it the chaos that was in it is now. Looking back, is it could have been fixed very easily. But I lived in chaos for a good year. But it taught me a lot, and I realized that this is something that I could most definitely do and succeed in because, I had the connections with the drivers and I had good connections and relationships with the customers, and, and moving forward to other terminals and other trucking terminals was also an interesting experience for me, because I also connected with those drivers and I also connected with those customers. So it was very revealing that this is probably something that I should just keep pursuing.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing with logistics. There's a lot of things that happen, and for a lot of people, they kind of only see a piece of it where they get into an organized situation, and they're like, "This is your role in the system, and you're just going to deal with like booking freight or talking to customers or finding loads for trucks." But I feel like joining those small kind of wild operations accelerates your ability to see more roles, because when you're in a large company you're only going to see what you're tasked with, right? But when you're in those, like, I mean, for example, I worked for two companies where it was just me and the owner of a carrier company, so I saw like claims and I saw accounting, I saw payroll and just everything. And I mean, it's annoying when you're in that situation, but when you kind of reflect back on it, you're like, yeah, you know what? I saw probably more than I ever would have in a good operation.
It, it most definitely, I had learned so much, and I didn't realize how much I was learning until I put myself into a position where I was in a large 3PL, and most people did not know any part of that side. And it made me realize that those experiences that I had before were much more valuable in hindsight.
Yeah, of course. I feel the exact same way about it. I mean, switching gears to something not great, what was your first logistics failure? What was the first moment where you're like, kind of screwed that one up?
I had I probably jumped the gun on becoming an independent freight agent much too soon. I didn't have a book of business, even though I had the connections with customers. I They didn't follow me there, and that was okay. That, I wasn't sure what was to be expected of it, but I after 4 or 5 months of nothing, like cold calling, reaching out to people that I knew, emails. I mean, 4 months of it, and I had nothing to show for it, and and then that was the point where I went back into another large 3PL situation, and that was interesting too. But that was
I mean, it's
my
funny to
biggest
hear that
failure.
story from you, because usually people that I speak with, I mean, that's the thing. You don't really hear the bad stories, right? You only hear the good ones. And everybody I talk to is always like, I ask that question a lot when I talk to agents, where it's like, how long did it take you to get your first customer once you became, an agent, and once you started looking for customers? And like people are like, oh, it took me like 8 days. Oh, it took me like 20 days. Oh, it took me like my first phone call. And my biggest fear with that agent thing, because I was kind of thinking about it at one point, I was like, what happens if 6 months goes by and I don't have a customer? Like, then what,
That's
And I mean,
that was my
it's not
reality.
nice. Yeah, it's not a good thing that that happened to you, but I'm happy to finally hear a story where it's like, yeah, man, like 4 months went by, and it was tough, because it's really tough, and people sell it like it's so simple, like, oh, just go become a freight agent, you'll be a millionaire. And there's risks to it. Nobody talks about the risks involved with doing something like that.
Mm, It it did put me in and my family in a financial crisis, because I was fed this huge picture, this whole, pie in the sky number. And if you do this, and you should have your first customer within this time frame, this is the money you could be making. And that was not reality at all. I didn't have much of a savings left. And my husband was like, well, we'll give it a try. We'll see what goes on. We ended up going into debt, pretty hard. And I'm thankful that he was willing to put himself in that situation, and we got ourselves out of it for the most part. But that was
Okay,
kind
that's
of
gonna
crazy.
segue us perfectly actually into this. What are you doing now? What turned it around? When did you start getting customers? Are you, an independent agent today?
I started getting customers, honestly, when I joined one of the larger 3PLs. I can't tell you who they are because I have a non-disclosure agreement,
Hey,
but
don't worry. On this show, we don't entice anybody to talk bad about. We don't do that over here. If people like to talk bad about people, that's cool. But we're not one of those shows. So.
but yeah, it wasn't until I joined that company, and it was probably the name that got them onboarded, that I really started seeing more customers come in, and it was pretty easy. Like, it was 2, 3, 4 customers a month, and it was consistent. And that's when I knew that this could make me significant money, and it was.
Yeah. So I mean, let's backtrack for a second here. So when you tried to be an agent the first time around, were you just under a smaller operation? Was the name just not, it had no weight behind it?
It didn't have any weight behind it. Not many people knew the name. Plus, the back end support was also not quite there as well. I had to pay for the services that most agents use, such as the load boards, any kind of their freight management system. I'd have to pay a fee monthly for that.
So you basically just got an MC number, and that was like,
Yeah.
kind of about it. That's kind of where the help
Yeah.
stops.
Yeah. That was
Okay,
it.
so what kind of freight are you moving now? What do you specialize in, and what does your operation look like from a kind of size standpoint?
There's not a whole lot that I don't do. I'll start off with the two things that I don't do, and that's hazardous liquid bulk, and that's only because corporate farming doesn't allow me to do it. And the other one is heavy haul, and that's because I don't want the headache of doing it. Uh,
Yeah, that's fair.
mostly drayage, box trucks, sprinter vans, and most recently flatbeds. And I've enjoyed that a lot. And every now
Yeah.
and then I'll get refrigerated freight. I don't care for it,
Yeah.
but I'll do it.
Yeah, I've never been a fan of refrigerated on the carrier side. Haven't dealt with much of it on the brokerage side. Flatbeds I dispatched as a carrier. I always find it fun because dry van is just a little like it's pretty straightforward. You just put it in there and you just drag
Yeah,
away.
that was
But flatbeds always
actually
been interesting.
the dry vans I found very interesting when I first started on dry vans, because I was like, so what else is there to it? Like, what else do I got to do? And they were like, nothing. That's
Now
it. I was like,
what? Yeah.
oh, okay. There's no no special requirements. I don't like. They're like, no, you just got to track it in. That's it. I was like, okay, that's
Yeah, I mean, like you get
what's the
those.
catch?
Sometimes you get a cool. I mean, you get a cool dry van load here and there, like pick up for Comic Con or deliver it to like a Tesla. I mean, there's some cool stuff, but it's a little bit predictable, right? It's predictable freight. Flatbeds definitely a lot more fun, and I find the drivers that drive flatbeds, they're always like super chill because they do a really like difficult like I don't know, flatbeds drivers are just a little different and they're like fun to deal with. So.
I've enjoyed. Well, the flatbed drivers are real fun. The box truck drivers, for some reason, they are hilarious, and I love all of them. I've had great connections and really good conversations with box truck drivers. They're a little different. I really enjoy that.
Yeah, I would love to run enough box truck freight for us to have like our our guys, Like I would love to have a steady amount of box truck freight where I can just start meeting box truck drivers, but I mean, we don't move enough of it for that to really happen. But I'm sure you could find some characters in box truck for sure.
Sure. I have a few locally, because I have one customer that's local, and I've met all but one of them, and they are very very cool, very funny, very down to earth people. I really enjoy working with all of them, really.
We got Shimmy tuning in. I want to jump in with you on the whole W-2 agent thing. I mean, we've kind of touched on it. Um, I mean, what would you say to people that want to become agents? Because as we said, it's always the rainbow and sunshine story, and I kind of want to hear maybe some advice about what to think about before you actually do become an agent.
Basically, make sure that you have enough savings to last you at least 6 months to live on. Because even if you get just one customer in your first month, it's probably not going to be enough to get you by if you don't have anything saved up. The second thing would be definitely make sure that you have people that you know that you can call on first. If even if you were a dispatcher, if you were a truck driver, I don't care where you come from. If there are companies that you know at least a little bit about a person there, make sure that you can reach out to them. Make sure that they know where you're going. Make sure they know that you are planning on branching out and becoming an agent. Because a lot of people that switch places like that, they don't know where those people go. And then you never hear from them again. But make sure that those people know that you are transitioning and tell them before you leave.
Yeah, that's actually some pretty solid advice. I've left so many companies, and then people like they're always like, yeah, we'll keep in touch, and then like you don't really make it clear that you're leaving like tomorrow, and you just lose a lot of contacts pretty quickly.
Don't do it through email. Don't do it through a company phone. Call them from your phone,
Yes,
from your
put that
personal phone.
on the Lacy quick tips, quick transition tips. I mean, I want to talk to you about the benefits of W two, since you're one of the few people I've actually got a chance to speak to that went from W two to agent back to W two. I mean, there are benefits to being a W two broker. I mean, what would they be for you?
Well, there's certainly less responsibility. I'll give it that. And then there's also the security of, you're going to have a paycheck every week or every other week, however often your employer pays you. There is that fluffy cushion where that you're going to have money coming in. So there's that, and then there's also, the help that you receive from being a W-2. So you have your job specifically, right? And then you've got the people around you that are doing their job, and you're not just doing all of it.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some supports, and there's definitely a case to make for having a salary and just knowing what you're going to get paid. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
thing. I don't like how the agent conversation is always putting W two down, because I feel like the agent conversation should just be, it should be winning on its own merits, right? Because the conversation always goes, become an agent because you'll get rich, and it's never become an agent for any other reason, right? And they always leave out the amount of effort it takes to be a cradle to grave agent. Like they always leave out the 7 days a week being available. They always leave out, if you get a cancellation at 8 p.m., it's still yours. Like they always leave out the small print on becoming an agent.
Well, I'll tell you right now, as an independent agent, I am not rich yet. Not yet. I'm getting there. Uh, but there is definitely something to be said that you are responsible for everything and anything that falls under that load, besides maybe billing. And even then, you still have a part in how that in that process as well. I mean, from the moment you accept that load to entering the load into the system, from tracking that load, making sure that the customer knows where that load is, who's taking the load. I mean, you are responsible for each and every step in that process of the load being delivered, picked up and delivered.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I just wish that more people would be honest and open, and I feel like these type of conversations need to occur more, because on LinkedIn especially. I mean that's actually going to segue us into our next part, which is, has LinkedIn brought value to your life professionally? And just before you answer that, when you're on LinkedIn, you just always see, become a freight agent, become a freight agent. Oh, are you sick of not being a millionaire? Become a freight agent. And I'm like starting to get kind of sick of it, because these recruiters are blasting like my feed is literally if you're a W-2 broker, you're a failure at life, you become an agent. And like I just wish there was more information about like the risks of becoming an agent that go in with those like posts. Right?
If you want to become an agent, you have to understand that, yeah, you are your own boss, and no, you don't receive your weekly W-2 paycheck, but you have to understand that you are also kind of employed in some extent with every customer that you have. You are technically a part of their team. They are hiring you to make sure that a job is being done. So before you have one job that you were paid under a W 2 and you think that you want to leave that, please make sure that you understand that you are now, as an agent, employed at many places. It's not it's not just one
I'm
job,
not
it's a
sure
lot.
if it was you that made that post. It actually might have
It
been
was.
you who made that
It was.
post. And I read that. I was like, shit, yeah, you're not like a freight agent. You're technically just an employee to 18 different companies.
It is. It's a lot. They hired you to do a job. They're paying you to do a job. And it is 100% your responsibility to make sure that job is done correctly.
Yeah, I mean, I think yeah, you made that post. I read that. I thought about that a lot because I mean, I got the podcast and I got this carrier defender thing, and then I got my like full time thing, with Hammer. And I thought about it like if I was an agent, that feeling of having multiple jobs would just kind of amplify itself, right? But
Yes.
I mean, there's a lot to go into it. But let's get into the topic of LinkedIn in logistics. I mean, has it brought value to you professionally?
Exponentially. I don't think I would be where I am today without LinkedIn. I paid for LinkedIn Premium, and it has served me so well. My income, the amount of money that I have put into LinkedIn has been worth every single penny that I have paid for it. Between the connections that I've made, the friends that I've made on LinkedIn, I wouldn't be here right now if it weren't for LinkedIn. My customers, at least 80% of my customers have come from LinkedIn alone.
Yeah, see,
It
I'm
feels
happy to hear the customer thing because that's always an argument. People are always like, "There's no customers out on LinkedIn. You'll never find a customer on LinkedIn." I mean, a good friend
yes,
of mine
there
who's
is.
like been in this industry for 15 years, he's always like, "I don't need LinkedIn. LinkedIn's like, there's no customers, just brokers." Like,
A lot of my customers have come from LinkedIn, and I am very grateful for it. It's excelled my career far beyond what I would have thought when I first invested into it. And if you're willing to put the work into LinkedIn, if you're willing to make posts daily, if you're willing to go out there and look into people, make sure you're making the right connections because that's important. uh, Eventually you're going to find business. And you get another thing about the LinkedIn thing, you might be approaching people, if you're not finding business, you might not be approaching people the right way on LinkedIn. If you're just add me to your connection list or whatever and then sending them spam, you're probably not going to find business. I get a lot of those and I ignore every single one of them. Sorry.
oh yeah, I ignore like I mean I read. That's the funny thing. So I'd say I ignore like 80% of the messages I get, but I still read every single one unless it's like way too long. Then I just kind of skim over it. But I read every single message that everybody sends me. And my friends like make fun of me all the time because they were like, because when you're smaller, when you're just getting into LinkedIn, nobody's really messaging you. But now, like my DMs are just kind of like popping off, and my friends are like, "Oh, look at you! You still like talk to people that message you." I'm like, "Yeah, like what do you guys think? I'm not like some movie star. Like I don't know. Like what do you think this is? Like yeah, I'm still gonna read messages." Like,
I
so
talk to people and but it's like as soon as you accept something and then they like
yeah, it's an instant
fire their pitch on your
massive
inbox.
message.
I'm like,
I mean, what are some tips
bye.
for you besides, posting every day, paying attention to how you approach people? I mean, are there any kind of secrets that you use that have fueled your growth?
I'll take that to my grave. I'm just kidding. So I basically, this sounds terrible, but I like stalk people. It is what it is. It is what it is. Like I go in, I look at, what their interests are, what they post about, what they comment on, and I interact with them, and and the relationship starts forming because I interact with them as a person instead of somebody that's trying to sell them something. We have something more to talk about other than, well, what kind of fright you got for me today? Like it's very,
I mean,
very
honestly, I
natural.
think being a freight broker, it always like circles back to how to get customers is like do your research. And so I'm like convinced at this point that successful freight agents are just professional stalkers. Like it's just like kind of part of the job at that point. Like
I could probably work for the FBI. I'm not gonna lie. That'd be kind of cool. But I do. I look at a lot of things, and especially my prospects. I know pretty much what their interests are, who they're commenting with, who they're talking with,
yeah,
where
you can
they've
see
worked
there's
in
like
the past.
circles of people. There's
Yeah.
like groups of people that interact with each other every single day. There's like these like subgroups, like, and if
Yeah.
you're on LinkedIn enough, you'll notice all of that stuff. But I want to get into your craziest logistics story. I mean, it could be on the carrier side of things, it could be on your own freight. I mean, just the craziest situation you've kind of gone through.
Which
I
one
mean,
do
I
you
could think
want?
of one. I just as I finish, yeah, as I finish that sentence, I could think of a recent one, but we'll just like leave
Oh.
that one alone for now.
The most recent one, I had a carrier. I had a flatbed that was picking up in Baltimore, and it was delivering in Spokane, Washington. Well, in the tracking, they like kind of stopped in Ohio for a long time. And I'm like, okay, well maybe somebody's got to reset their hours or whatever. I'm like, okay, cool. They get to Washington, and my customer calls me, and he's like, there's airplane tires on the back of this. So a little backstory. Not only were they delivering the product at this location, but the idea was to get everything off the flatbed, reload it so that they could take it to Stanfield. And was it Stanfield? Either way, it was another end of the state. But they had airplane tires on there, so they couldn't fit the product on the flatbed. So I called them. They were like, well, what, I don't know, what do you want us to do? Because they had already left. They were like, oh, okay, well, we can't do it. And I said, no, you're going to turn around. You're going to take the airplane tires off of the flatbed and reload and go deliver what was left in Spokane. So they turn around. Turns out they got it loaded, but they didn't actually take the tires off of the flatbed. They ended up delivering the tires before they took my load to the other end of the state, and never made it. They didn't make it on time at all. In fact, it was delayed a whole nother day. It cost the customer money in their staff just pretty much waiting on the driver, like a whole
So they
day's worth
basically
of
just
waiting.
tried to like add an extra load onto it. Like that was the
Yeah, and our
yeah.
contract explicitly says that there should not be any other commodity on loaded onto the equipment without noticing me first. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. No, it's funny because I just remembered a situation. So like I obviously do my due diligence when I was like selling freight, and I obviously checked every MC that I used, and I saw one note one time, and it was like dispatcher said the flatbed's empty. He's like 20 minutes from our pickup, and then the guy got there with like a half a truck full of stuff, like, and the customer was like, "Yeah, like this is no, we're not gonna load them. Just
Yeah,
send them
no.
away." But yeah, they like people try to do stuff like, especially in a down market. Like you'll see people try to get like creative with like the stuff that they do. But yeah, I don't know. Just try not to do stuff like that if you're a carrier because your contract states you can't, and you probably won't get paid even if you do deliver the freight. Still, just a bad situation.
I think we did end up paying them, but they ended up paying a lot in our customers' staffing fees. So
Yeah, I don't know how I would even handle that situation because I have a heart for carriers and I would want to pay them since they did haul the freight. And then I would think about it like it's not really the driver's fault, unless it is the driver's fault, unless he had a part in it. But usually, like the company will just tell them, like, hey, just toss this extra load on for us. And especially if it's like a company driver, like he doesn't deserve to not get paid because his company does bad business, right?
I have a feeling it was more the dispatcher than anything because he
Yeah.
lied to me about whether or not the tires came off of the flatbed and everything, and I noticed that they were in a whole nother state. I was like, "What are you doing?" He goes,
Yeah,
"Oh, they're
dispatchers
probably
are
not going to
so,
make
like,
it." I was like, "You're delivering those tires, aren't you?" And he goes, "Okay, well, I'm not going to lie to you." Well, no shit,
could have just started with that.
right?
I mean, let's get away from the logistics stuff. What are some of your hobbies? I think you make soap or candles. I can't remember now.
I do make soap. I haven't had enough time to do
Soap.
it lately. Yeah, I make soaps. As you can see, I have a house full of greenery. I enjoy that very much. They don't say much, and I like it. And then I read a lot of dark, dark romance, and I
Yeah,
play a
the
lot of
soap is
music.
cool. I know you've been doing the soap thing. I check them out. I mean, I pass. I'm like you. I just stalk people. Like, I might not talk to them, but I like see everything that everyone's doing. I'm like, "Yeah, that's a cool." So I've stopped in the middle of my day. I'm like, that's a pretty cool soap. Yeah, just like you. Um,
Uh,
as far as sports go, you watch any sports?
I don't. I used to watch the Steelers a lot because I was born in Pennsylvania and I was pretty much swaddled in a terrible towel, and I just don't have the time to watch it anymore. Maybe I just lost the passion for it because I don't live in PA anymore. But
Yeah, so I
I
was
guess
about
if
to
I
say my office is based in Pittsburgh, so I get like the Paul Skeens. I get all Pittsburgh all the time in my group chats. What city did you grow up in, just so I can have like some conversation tomorrow with them?
it's it's a really little town. I was technically born in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, and then I moved to a tiny little town that has like 1,000 people in it called Nanny Glow. I graduated in a class of like 50 people, but it's Nancy Glow.
Yeah, that's tiny. I mean, I live in a town right now of probably like 200. I live in like a village in the middle of nowhere, so I like completely understand the
It's,
situation. I also finished my last year of high school in a very small place. It's kind of cool. I mean, it sucks when you're there. Like when I was there, I hated it, but when I look back, like that's some of the best like months of my life because like the people out there, you have like space and everybody has cars. I mean, it's like fun out there. But when you're there, I understand the feeling of like hating being there because it's so small.
it wasn't really even like being small. It was just there was nothing to do. Well, there was
Yeah,
plenty to do
there's
if you
no
put
like
your mind to it,
opportunity.
but there wasn't anything to do.
Yeah, there's no like productive opportunities to have like a good career in places like that. That's the issue.
Yeah, no, and that was, that was prompting me to kind of move out of Pennsylvania a little bit because I saw, I had older siblings and I had older friends that like never left and they're still there and I couldn't tell you what they're doing. I have no idea. I do know that they've
Hey,
got
I'm
like
not gonna talk
kids.
anything on Pennsylvania, and I'm gonna say Pittsburgh is the place to be, just because that's in my best interest. If anybody watches this
I
later,
mean, well,
um,
if you're going to be in Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh is probably the place to be.
yeah, it's
That's the
like
best.
the place to be for sure. I mean, I'm a huge Paul Skeens fan. This guy has the best mustache. I've never watched the game of baseball, pretty much, but love that guy.
I don't
Um,
want. I
going.
don't.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't know anything about him if I didn't work here. But what's your favorite joke? Do you have a joke?
I am the joke. I don't know. I honestly no. I don't. I'm not that funny. I don't have any good
Okay.
jokes.
I just heard somebody, I think the last guest, the Trailer Trash podcast, they got me because this is the first time this has ever happened in like the 15, 20 episodes I've asked people if they have a joke. They asked me if I had a joke, but nobody ever asked me that, so I actually wasn't prepared for that. But this time I do have a joke actually. What do you call what do you call a fish without eyes? You just
But
call it. It's a pretty solid joke, actually. I heard that recently. Yeah. It got me because I didn't know the answer. It was just like it was a good one. All right, we're heading into the end of the show for me. I got two questions left for you, and the first one's gonna be regarding train and rail transportation. How many chuggas come before choo choo?
2.
I mean, two is better than like 12. Somebody said 12 one time.
I don't. I think beyond 3 or 4, that's excessive. But if in my mind, chugga
Okay,
chugga choo
thank
choo.
you. Yeah, 4 is like enough for me. 3, 4. I mean, anything past 4 starts to become too much. But the answer is 8 at the end of the day. But I don't agree with that.
8.
Yeah, there's like an actual answer regarding like train and rail transportation. Like actual professionals that operate trains,
Oh,
they count to 8. So
I
yeah,
should probably see myself
4.
out of the intermodal then, because
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess if you're not a train conductor, you probably won't get that one. Heading into the final question before we head into rapid fire, it's gonna be chicken wing choices. So, when you eat chicken wings, is it drums or flats?
flats.
Okay, ranch or blue cheese?
Ranch, which is nasty.
The face said it all about blue cheese. And lastly, breaded or non-breaded?
Non-breaded.
All right. I mean, 0 for 3. That's fine. I'll give that to you. That's all good. All right. I'm going to turn the show over to Lev. He is the ex founder of Everest, the current president of Alpha SR, which is a staffing agency in the logistics space. He has made his triumphant return to the podcast to run rapid fire. Have a good time.
Thank you.
Hey, Lacy, welcome to Rapid Fire. It's a pleasure having you. The time
Excited
to
to be
get to
here.
know you. Wonderful. Just looking forward to getting to know you from a different angle than all the questions Alex has been asking you. We do expect that you return because it was wealth of knowledge, and I look forward to hearing about your favorite joke. But in any case, we're going to play 2 games. The first one's called Either Or. The second one is called First Thought. So for Either Or, you're going to have to pick one within 5 seconds. Okay, first thing that comes to your mind. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, perfect. Instagram or LinkedIn?
LinkedIn.
Hunter or farmer?
Farmer.
Comedy or horror?
Ooh, horror.
Tacos or pizza?
Tacos.
Margarita or mojito?
Margarita.
Red or wine?
Say what?
Sorry, red or white wine?
Red.
All right. When you're trying to get in with a new customer, will you seduce the gatekeeper or lie to the gatekeeper to get through?
Oh, seduce them for sure.
Perfect. Introvert or extrovert?
Both.
Oh, come on. You can't do both. Like, pick one.
Extrovert.
Okay, perfect. Call or email?
Call.
Night owl or early bird?
Night owl.
Cradle to grave or Chicago model?
Cradle to grave.
Carrier side or customer side?
That's not fair.
Come on, you got 2 seconds.
Carrier.
All right, perfect. We're going to quickly transition to the second part of the game called First Thought. So, first thing that comes to your mind, spit it out. When I say the following, what's your favorite TV show
I don't watch TV.
of all time?
Dexter.
Love it. Favorite plant?
Allocation.
Favorite commodity to ship?
Metal door frames.
Amazing. Drink of choice.
Wine.
Have you ever shipped it?
No, I wish I could. Right to my house.
Just a few pallets, right? Favorite Thanksgiving dish?
Stuffing.
Best mode of transportation?
Broomstick.
Favorite event at the Olympics?
Ice skating.
Favorite historical figure?
I don't have one.
Celebrity crush?
I don't watch TV.
Well, like growing up, everyone had a celebrity crush.
Leonardo DiCaprio when he was cute.
Fair enough. Favorite city?
Probably New York City. It was pretty cool.
Favorite ethnic food?
Indian.
You know what it's also called, right? The traditional British food nowadays, because there's so much Indian over there. That's what. Board game.
Monopoly.
What comes to your mind when I say cold call?
Yikes. Yikes.
Okay. Oh, I thought you were like, yikes, like that's terrible.
No, yikes, it is terrible. I don't like cold calling.
What's the best signature on an email that you've seen?
It's all pretty bland.
Oh, jeez. If you could have one day off every year, what would it be and why?
If I could have one day off every year, when would it be?
Yes, and why? If you could have consistently one day off every single year, what day would it be and why?
The day after my birthday
Fair enough.
for recovery.
Recovery, R&R. Yep. What's the best out of office response you've ever seen? All right.
It's so
we need to bring
boring.
her back. We need to bring her back. We need a redo of the whole show immediately tomorrow. Lacy, thank you for coming on Rapid Fire. It's been a pleasure getting to know you, and
It's been a
look
pleasure
forward to having you on again.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. Thank you
Thank
for
you
having
for coming, Lacy, and we'll definitely keep in touch. And I'll keep watching your soap randomly and not saying anything.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Have a good night.
You too. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
All right, so that's it for episode 39. We do see the return of Lev and Rapid Fire. If you want to know more about Lacy and you missed it, check it out. She's a cool person and an independent freight agent who's out there stalking you on LinkedIn, possibly, probably, maybe not. I guess you'll never know. But if you have any freight, hit her up, and have a good night, everybody.